Hello, friends. I want to talk with you today about buckwheat. Not that buckwheat, not Little Rascals buckwheat. I'm talking about this buckwheat. Buckwheat is actually not related to wheat at all. It's actually not really a cereal grain, despite appearances that it looks like a grain. It's actually the seed of a plant that's related to rhubarb. It's the seed of a fruit. So the name buckwheat is a little bit misleading because it's not a grain and it's not related to wheat. It is gluten free. Now, the cool thing about buckwheat is that because it is a seed, it is very rich in protein. It has about 5 grams of protein per typical serving, and it's low in carbs, unlike the cereal grains, which are higher in starch and lower in protein. And that's what gives us that insulin spike and all the naughty things that happen when you eat a cereal grain. Buckwheat does not do any of that. Buckwheat is very rich in rutin, which is an important flavonoid. It's also rich in quercetin, another flavonoid that's important for helping us with our seasonal allergies, the histamine response, knocking that back. It's also very rich in magnesium, which most people, you can just go ahead and assume that you're deficient in it. And even if you're not having a food that's rich in magnesium on top of the magnesium you're already getting, is not going to hurt you. Magnesium is a critical nutrient. It is active in over 300 enzymatic jobs going on in your body. If you don't have enough magnesium, your biochemistry is not going to work properly. You're going to have anxiety, you can have heart palpitations, you can have twitches or tics, you can have restless leg syndrome type symptoms at night, muscle cramps, leg cramps, tension, all kinds of things, even cardiovascular events. So getting enough magnesium is really important, and foods like buckwheat can help us to do that. In one serving, there's almost 20% of the magnesium you need in a day just from this. Even if you don't take any supplements or use a magnesium oil topically or eat any other magnesium rich foods, that's an awesome start to your day right there. So we get the flavonoids, the important antioxidants that we find in buckwheat that we don't find in other superfoods. It has more antioxidant capacity than quinoa, which is everybody's favorite super grain, right? Buckwheat's even better. It also has fiber. It has plenty of fiber per serving. So when you get the protein and the fiber and those important flavonoids in every serving, that's going to reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes. It's going to prevent heart disease. And it's just going to stock your body up on nutrients that are a little bit difficult to get in our diets because our soil is so depleted of minerals and nutrients from conventional farming. All the naughty no-nos of conventional farming. So what you can do, buckwheat, just as it is, dry, if you were to take this out of the jar, put it in some water, boil it, strain out, because when you combine this with water, it does release an almost syrupy, kind of viscous mucilage, kind of like oatmeal does. Not quite that thick, but in the same neighborhood. If you were to cook this and drain it, you'd be fine. You'd get all that wonderful stuff that I just mentioned. But if you are wise, you shall do this instead. This is sprouted buckwheat. I don't know if you can see. Oh, there they are. You can see the little tails, the little sprouted tails sticking out there. That is what happens when you take this buckwheat, put it in water overnight, soak it in water overnight, clean filtered water. Think about it. You're going to be absorbing that water. In the morning, because you have a strainer cap like this, or a mesh bag, or maybe a mesh strainer if you don't have any of this fancy stuff, drain the water off, rinse the buckwheat really well until that mucilage stuff is all out. You don't necessarily need it, so just rinse it off. And then just set it to drain so that all or most of the moisture comes out. And in less than a day, and this is really fun for kids to watch too, they can literally watch a seed coming to life. In less than a day, just sitting at room temperature, the buckwheat will start to sprout and grow a buckwheat plant. And at that point, the nutrient content has multiplied exponentially. Any anti-nutrients that may have been present in the seed, which all seeds and grains contain anti-nutrients to prevent them from being digested, so they can at least have a chance to pass through an animal undigested and go and start a new plant somewhere. That's what anti-nutrients are for. Soaking and sprouting deactivates the anti-nutrients. The seed comes alive. All of the nutrition that was in it to begin with, which was great, is multiplied. The enzyme content goes up. Because it's a living food, you've put water into the community. Even the beneficial bacteria that live on the surface of the buckwheat seed have started multiplying. So this now becomes a superfood just from you soaking it overnight. And even if you don't have the patience to wait a day for all the little tails to form and for them to sprout, just soaking it overnight is helpful. It makes it cook much faster the next day. I mean, it's already, even just raw out of the jar, it only takes maybe 10 or 15 minutes to cook. If you sprout it first, 5 minutes max. You can steam it quickly and it'll be nice and tender. And it's delicious. It has a very neutral flavor that you could really pair with anything. Use this as a replacement for rice, and you'll get an incredible nutritional component in your diet you weren't going to get. Less of a spike on your blood sugar. Your insulin's not going to be going like this from the buckwheat. And you get all that protein and all that magnesium increasing because you sprouted it. And for all my growers out there, buckwheat is incredibly easy to grow. You can just take the seeds and toss them on top of the ground, put something over top of it so the birds don't feast on it. And within a couple of days, you'll have sprouts. If you take sprouted buckwheat like this, tuck it into your garden beds, it'll grow even faster, obviously, because it's already sprouted, already germinated. And the buckwheat plant will come to maturity in about 6 weeks max. This makes a fantastic cover crop in between your cash crops or your garden crop, whatever you are growing. And it enhances the soil. It breaks up compacted topsoil. It helps make nutrients that are locked up in the soil, breaking it into a form where your next crop can access those nutrients rather than them being locked in the soil. And as if it needed more positive points, pollinators love buckwheat flowers. The plant gets about 3 feet tall in good conditions. The top of it is covered with very tiny white flowers that all pollinators love. Bees love it. Beekeepers love growing buckwheat because buckwheat honey is delicious and in high demand. There's literally no reason for you not to have more buckwheat in your life. If you just grow it in a part of your garden where the soil's kind of crappy and you haven't been able to get anything to grow several successive crops of this. You could fit 3 or 4 in a season, depending on your growing zone, because they mature so rapidly. And you can choose to let them go to seed and bring another generation, or you can chop them down right when they flower and just use that green manure to improve your soil. There's so many wonderful things that this lovely seed can do for us, for the bees, for our gardens, and for our bodies. I invite you to try it. Bring it into your diet, even something as simple as using it as a replacement for rice or quinoa, and see how you feel. Yay, buckwheat.